Hello and welcome to Session 4, Workshop 11, Mindset Over Matter, Establishing a Culture of Empowered Educators. If you're enjoying the learning today, you can pay the joy forward by going to the EdCollab site and finding out how you can donate to the Brotherhood Sisterhood Soul, our adopted charity for the day. Because the EdCollab gathering is a day of free learning, we invite you to donate what you would have spent on coffee, lunch, or even registration for an amazing day like this, to pay it forward to support others. Today we welcome Diana Decosta with her session, Mindset Over Matter, Establishing a Culture of Empowered Educators. Diana is the K-6 Technology Integration Specialist for the West Orange Public Schools in New Jersey. Diana is passionate about effective tech integration strategies for all grades, but especially building the foundation at the elementary levels. She's certified in elementary and special education and holds a master's degree in educational leadership from Keene University. If you're joining us on Twitter, you can share your learning using the hashtag #TheEdCollabGathering, a space, and hashtag 11. And now I'm excited to introduce Diana Decosta.
Hi, everyone. So thank you, Jessica. As Jessica said, I am Diana Decosta, and I am a self-proclaimed EdCollab groupie. Ever since I came across Chris Lehman's call to action video for creating this platform, I was hooked. Whether it's participating in their think tanks, subscribing to their study series, or presenting a couple years ago with my dear friend and colleague, Dominique, or volunteering to tech host subsequent gathering days, I cannot say enough for what the Educator Collaborative has done for me personally on my journey as an educator. So I am honored to be here today with all of you. And I want to thank Chris Lehman and fellow tech team members for all that you do behind the scenes to make this day happen. I also want to give a shout out to my colleagues that presented before me. Just really bringing our West Orange to World message out there today was amazing. And also, I want to thank you, the audience, for being here on a Saturday or maybe sometime in the future, because these are all archived, and listening in on this topic of establishing a culture of empowered educators. It is a topic I am passionate about, and I'm excited to share with all of you. So as we speak right now, if you look down behind me, outside that door, there's an Educator Collaborative viewing party happening right outside that door that I am helping host with some of my amazing colleagues here in West Orange. And it's been just a great and amazing day of just empowerment and inspiration. So just a little info on where in the world we are in West Orange. We are a fairly large, very diverse K-12 district, just about 15 miles west of Manhattan. We're considered the suburbs of the city. And though we might be 15 miles west, it takes a lot longer to get into the city with all the congestion nearby. So I just start a little bit about myself. I'm a mom to I like to say two digital natives. My son is 10 and my daughter is 6. And they are very much my why as to why I do the work that I do. I just started my 4th year as one of 2 technology integration specialists in this district. And to me, my title is really a misnomer. I don't consider myself a specialist. And much to many people's dismay, I don't have all the answers when it comes to technology. It's really funny for me to step into some classes and be called the tech queen, or even I've heard Google goddess. But you know, I walk in and kids look at me and wonder, but I look at them and wonder back, because I know that no matter what, I'm always going to take something away from them when I walk into the rooms. Leading up to my role here in West Orange, I spent 14 years in the elementary classroom. And it was during the last 2 years where I had my eyes open to the paradigm shift in education. And I intentionally changed my practice, despite it being uncomfortable, to meet the needs of my students in my classroom. So I'm here today to share the year-long process of establishing a culture of risk-taking and innovation within the West Orange Public School District. And while we are far from done, we are just at the beginning of this process of gathering data. One thing is clear: And that is that there's been a renaissance or a renewal in the profession amongst our teachers that is palpable and real. So just what you're looking at right now is a Padlet I was inspired. I tech hosted for Shauna Coppola and Kathy Collins, and I saw that they were creating this Padlet of resources. And so I was inspired to do the same last night, and it's going to grow. It's just in its baby infantile stages, but it's, I'm trying to gather all the resources and where our work that we do here in West Orange is informed by. So I will tweet it out, and you can grab the link now if you want, but just for you all to have. So I wanted to start out with some fun. What do you picture when you hear the words empowered educator? What does that mean to you? Take a minute, tweet out a pic or a GIF that represents what an empowered educator for you might look like. And for me, I picked Wonder Woman. And I'm not sure if it's the name Diana that we share in common, the stance, or maybe it's the wind blowing in the hair. When I think of an empowered educator, it's that, right? And it's the deflecting of all negative energy, right? So that's my vision for what an empowered educator looks like. So just take a minute, and if you can, share out, and I have the Twitter feed on, to see like what does empowered educator look like for you. And we're going to move on. So on this next slide, when I saw this picture come up in my Twitter feed a while back, it was shared out by Eric Patnodes. His Twitter handle's No App for Pedagogy. I was struck by the paradox that this picture represented. I was reminded of actually when I first started implementing tech into my classroom. Tech use in my classroom was passive. I was using it to put kids on programs or moving up reading levels or to improve their typing skills because they had to get ready for that new state test online. And I promise I had the best of intentions, but even doing this passive stuff with kids back then with tech felt uncomfortable and clunky because I felt like I was giving away control, and it didn't feel right. And it wasn't until I heard Eric Sheninger speak about his experience a few towns away in New Jersey. And he asked us the question, how can we prepare students for the future if we are stuck in the past? And he shared his story and what his students were able to do in his high school. And instead of all the excuses that I was making, he came up and sought solutions. I couldn't, and I heard this today, like after hearing him, I couldn't unhear it and I couldn't unsee it. It's kind of like riding a bike, like when you get balance, right? You don't forget. And I couldn't not do something. So I became curious. I had a colleague who was willing to take a risk and an administrator who believed in us and had our backs, which was really the perfect trifecta to take a leap of faith. But on this next slide, you see today's pace of technological change out there, it's staggering and it's unprecedented. And yet the rate of change within education is incremental and typically doesn't keep up with what's going on outside of the school building. As a matter of fact, change in education was once described to me by a mentor of mine as glacial speed. So as teachers, we know that we need to prepare students for their work world of tomorrow and transform their learning today. But sometimes it becomes very daunting. I'm relying on a quote from Richard Riley, a former US Secretary of Education. We hear, education should prepare young people for jobs that don't yet exist, using technologies that haven't been invented in order to solve problems that we don't even know are problems yet. And as a result, when we hear that, there's been this sense of urgency to create the schools of tomorrow, pledge to be future ready, and innovate the classroom with new technologies and programs. But oftentimes, the most critical piece of the shift in our schools is missed: the why. I don't believe that it is intentional or ill-willed, but it is the least concrete piece of this process, and sometimes the uncomfortable place to stand in. And so then these initiatives can sometimes feel like because I said so to the teachers in the trenches. And here's the thing: it's not about the shiny new tool, because that tool may not be here tomorrow. It's certainly not about mastering home row, because there's voice typing for that. And just when you master a tool, or you get comfortable in a platform and an update appears or the button moves, and we are constantly in the mode of upgrading. And what we need to do is we need to upgrade our practice so that we foster this sense of curiosity and wonder, empower students to advocate for themselves, and provide time for students to iterate processes and think critically. And if we want this for our students, are we providing time and space and support for teachers to do the same work in order to shift their thinking about their role as an educator? Or are we just placing shiny new tools into settings in which pedagogy has not changed? So while change is necessary, this type of change cannot come from a top-down directive if it is meant to be lasting and meaningful. Rather, true change occurs when those who care feel valued and rally together toward a future vision they understand and want to impact. So think groundswell. So about a year ago, this time, when I was charged by the superintendent of our schools with the task to provide support for our elementary teachers in the use of Chromebooks and going one-to-one, particularly with our K-2 teachers, I quickly realized two things. The work that had to be done had nothing to do with Chromebooks. And two, that this would be a monumental task without the support of a team, or as I like to call my tribe. And I'll be talking about that more in a minute. So on this next slide with these circles, right? In my research for this session, I'd written the proposal and I knew and I felt what was happening here in West Orange, but felt like, how can I back this? And I came across Simon Sinek's TED Talk, How Leaders Inspire Action. And while he's talking about marketing terms, his work truly does resonate with ed tech and education. And I feel it illustrates the work we set out to accomplish here in our district. It has so many implications as well for us as educators and our relationships to students. Simon talks about a very simple rule called the golden circle. I'm going to give you a brief overview and not do it justice. Spend time watching this TED Talk. He discovered patterns in the way successful companies and their leaders think and act and communicate. And he goes on, he explains that for the most part, most organizations operate outside in, starting with the what. Every organization knows what they do, and some organizations know how they do it, but very few organizations know why they do what they do. And the why, it centers on purpose, values, belief, and feelings. It's not the result. And so therefore it's not as clear. And so oftentimes it just gets brushed under the rug and not dealt with. But he goes on to point out that all the inspiring leaders and companies, regardless of their size or industry, think, act, and communicate exactly alike. And it's the opposite, complete opposite of what everyone else is doing. And they do the inside out thinking. They start with the why. And the cool thing about this is two things. He ties the theory to biology and our brain and how we make decisions. And people don't, and it goes to explain that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. And he illustrates the golden circle with different examples. He talks about the company Apple, he talks about the Wright brothers, and Dr. King. In relationship to Dr. King, he says no invitations were sent and there was no website to check the date when Dr. King delivered his I Have a Dream speech. So how did he do it? How in the summer of 1963 did 250,000 people show up on the Mall of Washington, D.C. to hear him speak? And it was because people subscribed to his beliefs, because he shared his beliefs. And I think the mic drop of the entire TED Talk is when he says, Dr. King gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. So the golden circle made me reflect on my role as a tech integration specialist. When I first started out here in West Orange, I spent 2 years, my first 2 years, researching what the latest platforms were, what the latest apps were. I held workshops to show how to use the tools. But it didn't cause a change. That repeat customers, and I didn't feel like people were left inspired to go do the work with the kids. It was then when I think it was the first summer here when I created a virtual book club inspired by the work that the Ed Collab does with some teachers in district around Katie and Kristen Zimke's book, Amplify. And it was then that we were able to unpack not only what and how, but why tech integration was important and necessary. And when we could ground ourselves in this shared why of empowering student voice, there was this palpable sense of purpose and follow through. We could have open and honest, safe conversations about the work being necessary but daunting. And we were also able to create a cohort or a team to act as a support. So I'd like just to take a little breather here and have you reflect on your why. What is your why? What is your purpose? Not the result, right? But like, why is it that you are in the role that you are in? And take a minute and you can tweet that out. Okay. So on this next slide, we have, don't get worried here. I know it's a bell curve. I'm not going to get mathematical on you. But Simon Sinek goes on to discuss the law of diffusion of innovation, the law of diffusion of innovation, the good old bell curve. And this is a theory that seeks to explain the how, why, and at what rate new ideas and technology spread. So you'll see that, on the left, you've got your innovators and your early adopters, and then your early majority. The early majority come into play when they've seen what the innovators and early adopters have done. They wait for them to take the leap first, and then they'll come and follow. Then you got the late adopters, and on the other extreme, you've got your laggards. And the way Simon explains the laggards is the only reason why they have touch-tone phones is because they stopped selling rotary phones, right? So we all sit at various places at various times on the scale, but what I love about this law of diffusion of innovation, if you want mass market success, or more importantly, mass market acceptance of an idea, you cannot have it until you achieve this tipping point between 15 and 18%, and then the system tips. And that's how I know that our work here in West Orange, we've had some movement, we're not there yet. And so it's exciting because it's like we can grow. All before I saw this chart, this was all just my gut and my belief, but I could never stand in confidence to say that we were up to good work and that this is really what we should be doing. So I'm going to rewind back to my last point, right? So my first point, when I was asked to roll out this professional learning for staff, this had nothing to do with the Chromebooks, right? It's about establishing the why. But my second point was that in order to get this work done, I needed the help of a tribe. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And I get emotional because I think about my tribe. But this idea of shared leadership or even servant leadership came into play. when I had to establish a small K-5 district-wide ed tech team, which was representative of various grade levels and disciplines. It was comprised of like-minded, positive, and passionate educators. Notice I didn't say that it was comprised of tech-savvy people. It wasn't about the ability to rock the smartboard or automate processes on a spreadsheet. It was about passion and vision and desire. So we came together to establish some norms as we calibrated our thinking during full think tank session days. This was mind-bending and exhausting work as we poured over research and videos, but some of those days were probably the most inspiring and motivational days in my career. Without really naming it or knowing it, we were starting with the why. We read and unpacked articles. We watched TED Talks, one which was so powerful that we even shared it out with everyone when we did our grade level sessions, The Myth of Average by Todd Rose, just to be able to ground our thinking around the power of ed tech was amazing. So while we had the task of designing professional learning days for each level, we quickly came to the conclusion that without honoring where teachers were along the spectrum of tech integration, we would be operating on top of a business as usual listening during upcoming workshop sessions. You know, if we just said, this is the tool and let me show you how to use it and now go back to your classrooms and use it, we knew that wouldn't make a difference. You know, maybe some people would begrudgingly, or some people would and they would be excited, but who were we to say the what so and what you needed to know? So we decided to adopt a business as unusual mindset. Eric Sheninger talks a lot about that in his books. So we started to deliver professional, so if you see on the next slide, we delivered professional learning opportunities that were considered unconventional in our district culture at the time. You know, we had virtual book clubs. We followed the Ed Collab model and met beyond the workday with the use of various tech tools at our fingertips. We invited students to work with our teachers. We formed a connection with Olivia Van Legge at the Live Bits. If you don't know her, follow her on Twitter. Where if we're saying that kids can teach us and we're saying that student voice matters, are we really listening? And so we had sessions that she chimed in and shared her thinking around student voice. And then we had sessions where we had these full day workshop sessions with different groups, and we incorporated, you know, like we had to acknowledge the what so. I don't know if anyone listened into the Ed Tech for Littles session, Falling in Love with Ed Tech for Littles, but I think Stephanie Koya said it. Some of our teachers, well, not some, all of our K-2 teachers walked in and they saw a metal cart full of Chromebooks, and that was that. And so they knew they had to use the tools. And we had to say, yeah, like the cart literally came before the horse. And so we are here to support you. And we grounded them. We spent all morning with these, like I'm talking 40, 50 teachers, grounding ourselves in the why, getting them uncomfortable, using the tools to do the thinking. And whenever, like the first session that we did, I can remember I was asking them to share their thinking on video. I can't remember what platform, if it was Padlet, if it was Flipgrid, doesn't matter, right? But the hesitation was there, and the teachers were like, I mean, I saw full-on glam squads come out because they're like, oh my God, this is what I look like on video. And I remember I just like instinctively, I don't know if it's because of my 5-year-old daughter at the time, went to my computer and threw on Queen Elsa, Let It Go. And I just told them, have fun with it. Let it go. And so we created the space of safety and fun. The product was amazing. And just the energy. And also the other thing that we did, we had the opportunity to share with our administrators the work that we were doing. And so one of the helpful tools, Jo Buller, she wrote Mathematical Mindsets. She has some progression charts and around organizational freedom and mathematical thinking. and you could change mathematical thinking to any subject area. What I loved about working with administrators and that tool is that it's not finite. It wasn't finite. It wasn't like a checklist, like this is what you look for to see if tech is being used appropriately. It was like this progression where they can kind of see how are the kids interacting in the environment, what kind of thinking is going on, and to empower their teachers to realize, like, where do you see yourself on this progression chart? Where is your area of growth? So those are valuable tools. Look them up. I'll probably add them to my Padlet after this. Another thing that we did to promote this business as unusual mindset, and I think the thing that was unequivocally like the most integral tool that we used, because we wanted to avoid this concept of the one and done phenomenon that often happens with professional development. So we looked for ways using social media to sustain the conversation. So we created a district-wide hashtag Woe to World. And this became a powerful tool of transparency within our district and beyond. Now our hashtag Woe to World, what does it mean? Well, in Kristen Zimke's book, Kristen and Katie's book, I should say, Amplify, there's a foreword by Stephanie Harvey. And she talks about how one-to-one is really a misnomer, and it's really one-to-world. You put a Chromebook in front of a child, that Chromebook is really to the world. And we were so inspired by the thinking inside of that book that we wanted to carry on the conversation. And so we thought, what if West Orange could go out to the world? Not only like seeing what's out there, but also contributing to what's out there, showcasing our work and connecting. So what we began to do was build capacity in the art of tweeting through hosting district-wide challenges and teacher-led chats, monthly teacher-led chats. As a matter of fact, our first chat this school year was hosted by 11-year-old at the Live Bits. And it's been great to see teachers. It's beyond our work day, but the conversations and being able to connect beyond our buildings has been phenomenal. As a matter of fact, there are like Twitter celebrities within our district, one being, and I know she's watching, Dr. Casey Orange. She finished her doctorate last year, and it was like we could all celebrate for her this huge endeavor that she accomplished. And I remember being in a room and being told the story of Dr. Orange walking into like a random pizzeria in West Orange, and somebody else in our Twitter PLN was just starstruck that Dr. Orange walked in. And it was just powerful. And while we're not like huge, it's amazing because I walk into all the buildings and I talk about people, and oftentimes we're not related because we're so into our building or our classroom. So Twitter has been instrumental in connecting us all. And so besides connecting within our district, we can connect teachers to experts in the avenues for change. If you had an opportunity to watch that session, you could hear Diana Ferreira and Rebecca talk about how the global read aloud and connecting with experts and authors really impacted the work that students did in that classroom. And the thing I love too is that now there's a positive use of social media that kids can kind of put their finger on, because, you know, oftentimes we shy away from the use of social media because it could sometimes have this air of being taboo. But when a teacher can pull up a Twitter feed and follow a hashtag, or contribute their students' thoughts and put those thoughts out to the world, they have an example of the power of their voice, of what they can do and harness this social media for good. And on this next slide, I love this quote from Tara Martin. I was at her Book Snaps presentation at ISTE this year. And she says, "We can shy away from social media because of what students might do, Or we can be intentional about teaching them the positive influences of the social media. I choose the latter, and so do I. So I push teachers to go beyond their comfort zones and get to know this powerful tool to connect. So I'm going to attempt to share a video. So I'm going to come out here just to illustrate for you one of our ed tech team members and his journey and through a Flipgrid. You know, I'm going to speak a little bit about Jay Roberts before I screen share. He's a kindergarten teacher, and I have the privilege of being able to walk into so many classrooms and see so many wonderful teachers in action, and he's just one of those teachers. And when I asked him to be part of the ed tech tribe, he wasn't so sure, you know, and he had his reservations, but he was willing, and so he gave it a whirl. And what you're about to see is his work on a Flipgrid, his first attempt at trying to capture student voice. So I'm going to narrate. So the first thing he does, hold on, let me see if I can get my screen share up. Hold on. There we go. Okay. So I hope you can see that. The first thing he does is he introduces the topic in the Flipgrid, and not as a resource video, but like as just in the Flipgrid. So take a listen to the task.
So as Thanksgiving approaches, we should take some time to think about things that we're thankful for. Do me a favor, take one moment, close your eyes, and think about one thing you're thankful for. Leave your response here. Look forward to hearing from you.
And so the next thing he does is then he goes on to his daughter, Domenica, and he's like, all right, let me see if I think she was 8 years old, right? My 8-year-old can handle this tool. Let me see what she does.
I'm thankful for Norna because she gives me money when she goes to bingo, even though I don't like it when she goes to bingo.
So then after that, he reaches out to a colleague just to see, to reach out and see what she does with it. And I don't know if it was intentional, but getting her buy-in with this tool.
Hi, Mr. Roberts' class. It's Mrs. DeLuke. I'm thankful for my pet, Squishy. Squishy has lots of toys, and she really likes her Angry Birds. Say Happy Thanksgiving, Squish. Bye, guys.
So first of all, and when I shared this, I had asked him his permission. We shared this last year in our full day sessions with our teachers. The thing about Kristen's video is that it's shot from home, and it was such a gift. And, you know, for some of us, it was like, wow, like she really shared herself. But it's such a gift to kids because really, like, kids think we sleep underneath our desks, right? And so these kindergartners got a glimpse into Mrs. DeLuke's other life, right? And then her pet Squishy. I can't share them all. What he then went off to do was he engaged his students, and he asked his students to share their voice and share what they were thankful for. And there were so many things that you can unpack from their work, and you could teach into, you know, in literacy. You know, which kids said, I'm thankful for X, and that was it. Could they learn from the child that gave their reason why they were thankful for that? And so we could elevate talk and sharing of our thoughts. So I'm gonna share Arabella's response with you all. Oh.
I thank her for my mom because she always makes me food and she always makes me apple and she always makes me turkey.
So you just see a progression of like this process that he put into place. He wasn't gung-ho right away to step into it, and it took him time. And I know that also, the other thing I know about this is that he had a student teacher. I hope you can hear me well. I'm going to plug back in, or maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. Hold on. He trying to get my thoughts back. Hold on. He not only like just the work that he had done really pushed his thinking, and he had done this with the help of his student teacher. And it was still very like teacher centered, because that's where it felt comfortable. But he eventually branched out. And what he had done was create this viral experience in our district, because now teachers were saying, wait a second, kindergartners could do it, so can we. I walked into his class day 7 this year. There was no student teacher. There was no one else but him and those, as he likes to call his kindergartners, little cheesecakes. I can't even. And they were on their device getting ready to enter Google Classroom for the first time. And it was just amazing to see what a year's time had done for him as an educator, and then for those students in his classroom. So just some other thoughts. So we continued with this business as unusual mentality. Things like teachers sharing their work, not a show off, a showcase, and a willingness to just share and break down those classroom walls. We not only in the virtual world, but also on our next slide, you see in our physical world, and there was a demand for cross-district visits where colleagues met to watch students and other colleagues in action. And then we had like time to debrief with one another. And we've done some of that work, but we're going to really get into that work this year. And then my colleague, I have a counterpart at the secondary levels, Tanya. She had this vision for a fun learning environment where teachers showcase tips and tricks in an annual district demo slam. And so last year we had our second annual demo slam, where teachers have like 3 minutes to throw it down and share their tech tip or whatever it is that they did in their class, some practice that they wanted to share. And, we just elevated it. We have one of our guidance counselors, Flo, what a great name for this DJ. She's a DJ on the side. And so she came in and DJ'd the event. We had like an amazing fun time, and it was learning, and the culture was shifted. It was just not normal, but we were like loving it. And it was after school and teachers came. So we also plan to grow that idea with our demo slam and empower teachers to share their passions and deliver Ignite speeches, as we've seen in other places. So I'm coming close to my close here. Can't believe it. And I want to share this next picture with you. So yesterday I was walking in a university in my neighborhood with my dog. And it really was like to take a step aside and just think about this, think about today. And I came across this heap of heavy wooden old school desks piled up on the corner of this campus. So many people walked past it. I saw it from afar and it really caught my eye. I actually couldn't believe it, and I had to take a picture. I'm curious what you see when you see this picture. So take a moment and just read out, like, what does this represent to you? What do you think of? And I couldn't get over it. Like the worlds collide, because I have this image from the beginning, right, where that Eric Patnode's picture of the traditional classroom with technology thrown on top of the desks, right? And then I see this, and there was everything about this. I loved it. The disarray, the disorder, the polar opposite of the traditional fixed mindset right there in front of me. that fixed mindset that can stifle a movement or suffocate an organization's culture. And I imagined, I made this totally up because you can make any story up, right? I could just say, hey, they were put out to trash, but I just imagined that a revolution just occurred. And right here in these piles of chairs, I don't know, was it teachers, were it students? We just weren't going to have it anymore. And I think of the juxtaposition on the next slide where we started. And I believe that this picture serves as a reminder to not just accept the status quo. Listen, I was here today talking about creating a culture of empowered educators. I was talking about my role as technology, but that's just a small, it doesn't matter. It's anything that we do. We heard, in so many sessions, it was the common thread, right? Don't accept the status quo. Disrupt your mindset. Become grounded in your why. Nurture your own sense of curiosity and wonder. Be empowered to advocate for yourself and your students. Give yourself time to iterate processes and think critically. Find your tribe. And then most importantly, pay it forward. Because what is possible is a culture in which educators are inspired to change, and in turn, students and their voice can be heard. So I just want to thank everyone for being here today. And I ask that we carry on this conversation. I'm just birthing the whole Mindset Over Matter EDU hashtag, as well as our Woe to World hashtag. I think I guess this version cut off Woe to World, but follow us. Our journey has just begun, and I look forward to connecting with all of you.
Hi, Diana. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for your passion. You had me going there because I'm a sympathetic crier. So it was like, the waterworks immediately for me. So, but I mean, your passion is so palpable. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And for sharing everything you did today and all of the amazing work of you and your colleagues. Just so many great moves for us to think about for how we can go about business as unusual, as you said, because it's going to make a huge difference in our kids' lives, in our teaching lives, and in the field, this work that we do, that we dedicate our lives to. So thank you so much for all of that. As we close out this session, I just want to remind everyone who maybe joined in a little late or we're popping in and out of sessions that Diana's entire video will be archived on the EdCollab website so that you can view, share, forward to colleagues. That way the message can continue to get into the ears and hearts of those in our profession. And I'd like to preview our closing session for you, information for how you can join us for the next session. So let me do a quick screen share here. I've got 1,000 tabs open, but here's some info about, hopefully you can see that our last session, our closing session, beginning at 3 Eastern. So we have about 15 minutes for you to get up and stretch, maybe grab an afternoon snack or some caffeine to get you going through the rest of our time together. With that, we'd like to thank you again, Diana, and say goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.